Welcome back, everyone, to Having a Conversation with Millennials, Race, and Why. And today we're going to focus on the conversation with millennials on identity. And before we get started, would everyone like to introduce themselves, please?
Dev, you up?
Okay. I'm Devin. Simmons, yeah. That's my mom. And we're here to have this conversation, so enjoy. Who wanna go next?
Okay, I'll go.
I'll go next. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amina. I'm from Lumberton, North Carolina. I'm Lumbee and African American.
Calvin.
Okay. I didn't want to cut nobody off, but my name is Calvin Thomas, and I'm from Dallas, Texas.
I'll go next. I'm Lakin Adkins, and I'm a student at the College of Law with a lot of these folks here, and I'm from the Huntington area, Huntington, West Virginia. So.
And I'm Ariana Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Ariana Thompson. I go to law school with all of them, and I'm from Maryland.
Oh, what part of Maryland are you from?
Baltimore County originally, Anne Arundel.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yes, right. You are from Anne Arundel. All right. Well, we miss you. All right, ladies and gents. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get started. The topic for today is, what role has racism played in shaping your identity? And how did it shape your childhood up until the present? And whoever chooses to just go ahead and jump in, go ahead and do that.
Yo, Calvin, you want to go first? Because I think we've talked about this a few times.
You talked about it with me.
I can just go ahead and I guess just start it off with, as far as like my childhood. Where I'm from in Dallas is like predominantly Black. And so as far as like my, I guess I learned a lot about as far as like racism, as far as like from a school standpoint. But growing up, I didn't really have that experience because my church was predominantly Black, my school was predominantly Black, and the neighborhood I was from was predominantly Black. So it was like, growing up as a child, I understood a lot of things as far as like the historical things and how it's still around. But as a personal experience or anything, it took until maybe when I got to college to start really understanding what it means to me as an individual, as a Black man. And so I would say that as far as like shaping my childhood, it's the fact that I understood and I was aware that it was there. But like I said, because I was always around my people, I didn't have I didn't have my experience with it until later on in life. So as far as like my childhood, I was mostly, and I knew as far as like from other people's experiences. So from that, I understood that it made me appreciate more so a culture of my people and where I'm from. But then as I got older, and I started experiencing things on my own, felt that like it makes me a little bit as far as empowered because of this stereotypes and different things that's associated with it. I truly understood that this is what people know about my past. I don't know, it strengthened me because I want to set out and do what I want to do without other people having these notions about me without knowing me. So I think just growing up, it affected me in the sense of like, it made me stronger because it made me understand that like, no matter what, you're going to have to do this yourself in a way of don't let these things don't just be an item in a sense. So it made me think who I am as a person. And so I think in a way, it affected me as a child to where I began to strongly identify with my family, my friends, my culture. But then as I got older, it was more so of a personal identification kind of thing. And it kind of empowered me in an individual sense, just to kind of start the conversation.
What else want to go?
I mean, I'll hop in here. So I took a little bit of a different spin as to how it affected my childhood because I guess for me, it wasn't what I experienced firsthand, but it shaped how I was raised because of how and when my parents grew up. And so my dad was born in 1957. My mother was born in 1961. I'm sure my mother doesn't like me disclosing her age, but either way, you know, they grew up in Fayette County, West Virginia, southern West Virginia, and they were at that tail end of things changing, beginning that change, honestly, as far as when they were children. And so that shaped a lot of their views. And of course, they always just raised me to be nice to everybody, be kind to everybody, but they instilled in me, not at a super young age, but as I began to work and put my dreams like on the table, like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. And I just remember hearing from my mother, like, you have to work harder than them. Like, you have to. Like, it's just the reality of the way it is. And so racism, I guess, impacted my childhood in the fact that my mother instilled to me early that there was going to be a difficulty. And it's not me, it is the system. But she said, now you have to work twice as hard as them to get just as far as them. And so for me, it's always shaped my work ethic. It shaped my views, and it made me very aware at a young age that people weren't always going to see me the same. And those situations played out like in high school or something, like when there was something I was clearly qualified for and I didn't get it, my mom was like my biggest advocate. So like where I would have dropped it, this woman was like, oh, well, let me write this letter for you. And then, oh, all of a sudden we have a change. And so like, you know, and my father, my mother coming to these events and being like, hey, yo, shorty, we the only Black people in here, you know, because I was raised, unlike Calvin, in a predominantly white area my whole life. And so I've always gone to school with many different people, but mainly white people. And like my high school actually had a lot of Black people. It was one of the most diverse. It is the most diverse high school in my county, and hated for that fact, actually. But it still was nowhere near like a whole community predominantly Black. And so I've just kind of watched different cultures kind of influence me, but watching the overall system. So it's never been like overt, like somebody's been like, I don't like you because you're Black. But it's been like, I just need you to recognize the opportunities and the things that you see before you. We've worked twice as hard to get them. And you're going to have to work twice as hard to get them as well.
I'll go last. I'll let everybody, because I feel like I spoke a lot last time. I'll go last.
Did you say that? Did you say the F word?
No, I said I'll speak last.
I thought he did too at first. I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, this is going on my Facebook.
No, I said I'll speak last because I spoke a lot last time. So like Amina, Allie can go.
Okay. I guess I'll go. Guys, I'm complicated. So I'm gonna start by saying, as a child, no one really pays attention to what color their father is or what color their mother is. You know, you're just a child, and that's your mom, that's your dad. So it wasn't until I started to get a little bit older, I'd start to notice that people would be looking at us in restaurants, even in like early 2000s, which is, you wouldn't think would be occurring, but I always wondered, like, why are people trying to always figure us out, like figure out our dynamic? Because, you know, sometimes, especially when my father's family, like brothers and sisters come, and then my mom's brother or sister comes, it just causes a lot of confusion. I can see on people's faces, like, how does this work? And so I guess I'll start with my Black identity. And I remember I went to basketball practice with my dad one day. My dad was my coach, and I was talking to my teammates, and I was like, yeah, I'm Black too. And, you know, they're like, no, you're not. no, you're not black. And I didn't understand at the time that, you know, because my skin color isn't black, that it was just as simple as that at that time period, you know, like I don't look black, so I'm not black, you know. So that's kind of like the first instance of like, oh, like, well, what am I then? And then in terms of my Native identity, I didn't start to realize that I wasn't fully accepted there either until later on, probably high school, college age, and because of the whole idea of blood quantum. So, and then even at a younger age, actually, I went to a camp, academic camp, and I told someone that I was Native American, and they were like, Native Americans don't exist. Like, what are you talking about? You know, and this is 21st century, like 2007, 2008. So, you know, just in my childhood, hearing things like that, it's like, okay, well, what am I then? And then, you know, I get to college, and I've never really thought about, you know, where the origin of my name was from, and the fact that obviously I don't have a common Native American or, you know, whatever name. So having a name like Gafar, everyone's always like, oh, where are you from? And I'm just North Carolina. And they're like, no, like, where's your family from? I'm like, North Carolina. What are you saying? And so I guess having that racial ambiguity, people constantly place me other places than where I'm actually, who I actually am. And sometimes it's frustrating, and I don't have a problem answering the question now, but when I was younger, it would kind of be like, dang, like I already told you, like, why do you keep asking me? So, and then, so I've kind of had exposure to it for a long time, and being multiracial and racially ambiguous, as I mentioned, just, I'm still conflicted about it to this day. Like, I'm going to be honest, you know, it's hard to decide where I belong or if I belong anywhere. And I like to say that I belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So that's my dealings with it and how it shaped me as a person.
You, Lakin.
Okay. All right. So I am white, and obviously I look white too. So I kind of had a similar experience to Calvin in that, like, I grew up in an area that's predominantly white. So I didn't really, I guess, pay attention when I was younger. And it didn't really hit me until, honestly, college and the election, that it was a problem back home with how people of color were treated. So I'm trying to branch out and do stuff like this more now. So yeah. So I don't really have a big experience with how it's shaped me, I guess, because I didn't really have it impact me negatively. I'm sure that it probably benefited me positively in some ways, but nothing that I can, and I've been trying to think really hard about this the past day, and I can't think of anything in particular that stands out to me in my childhood, you know.
Yeah. I'll go next because I was born in West Virginia as well. So I don't know. I guess when I grew up, I didn't really. I mean, you know, like I used to argue with you and Daddy all the time about like, why is everything about race? Even though I would clearly call things out when I knew something was wrong, because, you know, like if it's even, it's like Amina said, you don't see race, but you know when something just doesn't feel right. So I would say things, but then it's like when we get home, you know, like some, you know, you got to work harder than the white kids, and then it's like, you know, why is everything about race? Because like I see it, but I don't understand it conceptually. And then it's also like at the same time, especially like when I was going through like high school and other things, where because of how I am and who I am, I didn't really fit the stigma or the stereotype on either end of like what people want. So like clearly I'm not white, but I'm not black enough either. So that was always a big thing. that I felt like kind of like, do you ride the wave and just join everybody else and conform, or do you just like wade, hopefully not drown, and come out as yourself and not have to give up on any of your convictions or principles or anything like that? So like, I would say racism negatively brought, no, I mean, positive, and it came out positive, but a lot of negative things happened, but I've learned from those experiences. So like, I've experienced, you know, like I know like when I was in Great Mills, Leonardtown, they threw nooses at the football team. Yeah, yeah. You didn't. Yeah, they put in the newspaper that they threw manipulated rope at the kids. But yeah, yeah. That's why I'm not gonna say. I was about to say that word then. But forget Leonardtown. but I don't know. It's a definitely I've become conflicted with a lot of things, especially in the sense of I felt like at a time, like I think I've talked to you about this as well. Like I was too emotional, and I think in a sense that played into, you know, like me. I wanted to change myself. So when we moved from wherever we were in Maryland before to St. Mary's County, I used that opportunity to completely like recreate myself. But it kind of came at the cost of like, I can express myself, but I'm sometimes not the best at it, especially like, I don't know. Like, it's like, I just suppress or repress emotions. And sometimes they'll come out, but a lot of other times, you know, like somebody in the family dies or something happens. And normally like people will probably cry on the spot, but like, I may not cry for like a few days, and like it's just that. So I don't know. I would say like as far as my childhood, there's a lot of negative influences from racism, but I learned to turn those into positives just by like building myself up. Yeah,
I think that's an interesting concept of like, you know, it has its positives and it has its negatives of like what it can teach you about who you are, but also like how you want to interact and how you want to present yourself. And a friend and I, we used to do a web show, and one of the episodes we did was called like the black bag, basically, and like what do you carry in that bag? And like we decided to not focus on the negative fully. Like we did go there, but we also went to the positive. And I said, you know, in the last few years, because of our culture as a whole, I have an elevated sense of pride that I can carry from my culture. And like I've learned how much I love like African music and like different kinds all around, but like just I'm so proud of who we are. And then I also, you know, sometimes get frustrated with who we are. And so like and what we're doing as a group of people, because I'm like, we have so much potential and why aren't we using it? But that episode was really like one of those identifying moments to say like, you know, here's my pride, but here's also the fact that I carry around that people identify me with a group that is lesser than, and some of them see me as that person and some of them don't. I carry that I don't feel comfortable in a lot of spaces, especially with a lot of police and for just the normal reason, like people die over nothing these days, and I'm not comfortable in your presence, you know. And I don't have a problem with most people, but when there's a group, and I'm like, not only am I introvert, all of you are armed and do not necessarily see me as a person. So I'm concerned. But to really have had that talk, I've considered more and more how race is playing out. It's also shaping what I want to do. And I remember in undergrad, someone said the word social justice, and I had known I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 10, but when they said the words, it clicked. that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to engage in civil rights conversations, and if I have to step inside of a courtroom, that's why, to go on behalf of my people, or other minorities, because it was just the toll that it was taking on me, and I've told a number of my friends that I kind of live in a broken state, because it's not that I'm unhappy, it's just I realize the brokenness of this world, and I keep watching body after body laying on the streets, and my empathy is too high for it not to shatter me. Not for it not to break me every time. So in that year, the same year, I decided, kind of, or within a year of me deciding that, like, the whole Freddie Gray thing happened in Baltimore, and I'm sitting there in the University of Maryland campus, just broken, and within weeks of him, my mom sends me an email about my cousin who was killed by a police officer, and I shattered instantly. But like the lines that she put in there, she said, "This world is going mad. Please be careful in your comings and goings." And it just really changed me. Like, it changed how I viewed a lot of things, and it changed my experience with a lot. And that was where I actually questioned, did I really want to go into law? Did I want to be a part of this all the time? Did I work side by side with people I didn't really agree with all the time? And I said, but it has to be done. And so that's where that's kind of taken me.
Can I just bounce off of that and say the last statement you just said about it's necessary for me to be here? Like, I feel that seriously. People of color need to be in spaces like that, even though, it's tough and you get a lot of pushback from, the majority, even from sometimes your own people. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit, was the internalized oppression within our communities. And I think in order to move forward, of course, like I know personally I have to deal with my own internal conflict, but I want to move on next to my own community, because my own community needs to be held accountable for the things that they're doing wrong, and for uplifting the systems that our oppressors put in place to, control us. And, they did a great job of putting those systems in place and controlling us, because it has us divided against each other and pointing at each other and not accepting ourselves or people that are like us. And I'm going to go back to the blood quantum thing, because that was something that was designed to exterminate us. And, when the colonizers got here, one of the ways that they subdued the population was raping the women, impregnating them with children that were mixed breed or whatever. And, it's psychological warfare. And it's, because just like me, like, it's like an internalized split. You don't belong anywhere, like, but you're not enough to be this, and you're definitely not going to be accepted by the white side of you. So I don't know, it's frustrating, because there's people that are Native American, that are Black, that are Latino, that voted for Trump, that still support Trump, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And the only explanation for that is that some psychological concept has you believing that you're actually accepted by the people that are placing these systems that affect people like you, that look like you, for you to be able to go along with that. And I think something has to be done within our own communities, and we need to hold ourselves accountable before we even get to this bigger conversation of, okay, we have all of our stuff together, so now let's move forward together and attack this system together. So
That's I agree with that, and it's interesting too, because it brings up something where, like, I know Mom used to take us to a lot of powwows when we were younger, and it was interesting just because, especially when we were coming up in Maryland, like where my dad is now, I don't think Waldorf was like that when we lived there earlier. Like earlier, I felt like when I was younger, it was still predominantly white, and we lived, around the area and stuff, but we weren't everywhere. But now where my dad lives, like he lives near pretty much the same area. Like there's so many Latino people, there's so many people of color, and it's weird because I feel like Calvin, y'all understand this. Like since we go to West Virginia, WVU now, and like it's been forever since I actually went out into the community in Maryland, and I go out and I see Black people everywhere. Like we're the cashiers. Yeah. We're the cashiers. We're the customers. We deliver everything. Like it was weird. Like, cause it was just like, whoa, like we really are like running everything out here. Like we own the businesses and stuff like that. Like if it's a franchise, it may be whatever, big corporation, but the franchise owner is Black. Like, so it was cool to see that after being in West Virginia for so long. Cause like I hadn't visited really back to see like how everything was. And so like St. Mary's is not like that, but Waldorf and White Plains were. And even in Annapolis is cool to a degree because you still see people out there. But when I was younger and I didn't see that, it was cool going to powwows, even though probably for me, my vision or my like the way that I pictured the Native American community was probably not idealistic, but putting a lot more emphasis on the positives than probably the negatives. But going to powwows is cool because it's like I got to see a sense of community that I didn't. We never went to really any African, festivals or anything like that. Where you have your people and they know their nations and their language and they know their dances. They make the dream catchers, but they're authentic dream catchers. They're not just being like mass produced. They have the crystals. They do all the things. They even the funny magnets and jokes about colonizers. But
why are you putting me out there like that? It was in DC. I can't do DC. We exposed you to the readings in the books. No, go ahead. Excuse me.
But I think that shaped me in a way that I think my spirituality, in a sense. I think that's one thing that, like, racism has always strengthened my spirituality because it makes me feel like why is it so important to you that you make me feel like trash in all aspects of life?
Yeah, inferior. You make me feel inferior. And you kind of touched on that earlier, Devin. And like I didn't want to like misconstrue what you were saying about how, in a way, it has these indirect positive effects on you as you're growing up, because it's like now that you are aware of this is the reality I face, because you can't do anything about how you were born or like your race or your gender or anything. So it's like, okay, I have an understanding of this is how the world is going to view it. But because you have that knowledge and because your mom has exposed you to these things, it's like that makes me appreciate more who I am as a person. And it makes you, not only does it empower you in that sense, then it's like, also I can go out and now be an advocate, or I can go out, if I'm not going to be an advocate, I can at least have conversations like these to where I'm getting out my beliefs and my values that I've experienced as a child. So now that you may have a better understanding of it. Like for me, I know, I think I told you guys, like West Virginia, although it's like predominantly white and everything, my first experience, as far as I guess we're going into like a culture shock type of thing, was my undergrad. Because when I got there, I was like one of 6 Black people on the school. And so it was one of those experiences where you go from a predominantly Black neighborhood to now like you're one of 6. And it's like the very first conversation I had, that wasn't even a conversation, is like I'm walking up, I'm going to my dorm, and they're like, I guess we got to hide our stuff now. And I'm like, wow, like this is what I'm doing now. And so then you get to that experience and you get, those are the things you get. And it's like, you know what? Now I understand that my parents and my family told me this may happen, but now that I'm experiencing it, it's like you can either get into the anger and just like, you know what, I'll isolate myself, whatever, and deal with that. Or you can confront it head on because you know who you are as a person. And it's like, I don't have to change your mind, but I can be myself. And however you take that, it'll either give you a better understanding of my background, or it'll at least show you that like whatever ill-advised notions I had about you, now I got to view it differently. And that's why I feel like it's definitely important. I think may have been Amina who said it earlier, but it's definitely important to like be a part of these type of conversations, because some people don't have that experience. Like me and Lakin, like we both grew up in an area that like we wouldn't have these experiences. And so when you have these open conversations and open dialogues, now you're having these exchange of ideas that I feel like can have a positive influence on both people.
Mm-hmm.
Ariana or Lakin want to speak? I was gonna say something, but I just want y'all to take y'all's time.
Go for it.
All right. I like how you said like the confrontation thing too, because another thing too that always, I may be weird in this, but I'm very talkative and things like that. Like, you know me, like I'm very extrovert, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, I'm introverted about certain things. Like and one of the things I really thought was cool about powwows was the dancing, and it's cool because, you know, I like to dance, but it's different to do that in front of people and like to actually know like a routine and things like that. I don't know. It takes like a sense of courage, and especially in like a land where, you know, the goal was to purge you, you know, like legitimately get rid of you, make you know that you're less or whatever. And so when you see that, it's interesting to see like, just like, I'm just going to say courage, because I don't know what else to call it. Like, it's just like a positivity though. And it's beautiful. And I kind of took that with me through a lot of things. And especially when it came to like confronting certain stuff, you know, like I went to Flagler College in St. Augustine. And one of the things, like when, there are these shops like apart from the main tourist area, there's a street called San Marco, and it's full of a bunch of shops. What I didn't know was that these shops were full of blackface, and I saw a Nazi armband, but we're gonna ignore that. and I don't know. Normally, I feel like a lot of people probably go in and walk out. You know, if you're a person of color, especially black. But I don't know. I feel like it's kind of something sometimes you just have to face head on. Because I was like, I'm not gonna. Everybody was staring at me too, and I did not care. I was just walking through the whole thing. Like, I'm gonna look at every single thing you have, and it was black babies being thrown into to alligators on magnets. Aunt Jemima. What was the other one? A bunch of just blackface in general. But there was one that really I just can't remember what it was. There was one, it was just a giant picture on the wall, and I remember like looking at it, just standing there for a few seconds and looking at it. And I don't know. It's interesting just because the person I was with at the time, they wanted to leave. And it's funny because they weren't even black. Like they were like basically Latino and white, but with more white passing, even though they're immersed in like the Latino culture and stuff like that. But they felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave. But I don't know. It's almost kind of just like, it's kind of like standing up to a dragon, you know? It's like a big thing, and a lot of people probably, you know, you get into it and you're like, nah, let's just turn away and leave. And then, nah, like, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna go through your entire shop. I'm gonna make you like, you can all stare, and we can all be uncomfortable. We can, like, it's like I did that for the next 5 stores.
Passive aggressive.
And what was interesting is that I think what even made it funnier for me, at least, was there's this couple. They kept going down stores because they were, you know, it's a straight line, so you just got to go to every store and see what you see. And so like they kept seeing the stuff too, and I guess they're looking at me like, you know, because I'm the one black person in this entire store. At every store we went to, I was the only person there. And now I know why. But I don't know. I carried that sense of courage with me from like the powwows and stuff like that, just because like it just shows like no matter what, like you can let yourself be known, and not in the sense of like trying to be famous, but you exist, you're here, and you're here to stay. So deal with it.
I want to add to that and say there's so many ways to subliminally say like F you. And the powwow and the dancing thing is definitely one of them. And I've used my regalia I went to a predominantly white high school, and every year in November I do an assembly. Like, hey, here's the history of my dress. Watch me dance in it. Watch me, like, yes, I got this. Like, you know, and it does feel good. That's definitely probably one of my favorite things about my culture. And, you know, both sides of me, like we come from people with a lot of strength, you know, like one half of me, like black side of me, we came from people that broke chains, and then the other side of me, we came from people that survived genocide, you know. So we got warriors, we got survivors. Like, you can't tell me I can't do nothing. Like, you can't tell me I can't do nothing. I can do anything. If they can get through that, I can take this test to get into law school. I can take this test to get into medical school. You know, whatever your dreams are as a indigenous child, like, you can do it because you have it in your blood. You have it in your DNA. You know, it's wired in you. You can do it.
Yeah.
I think there's like two thoughts I have from that. One is like knowing when, between you and Devin, is just like knowing when to be confrontational, knowing when, like, not when to. Because like I have my thing of like, I'm not very confrontational anyway, unless you press me like to a certain extent, and then it's kind of hell on earth, basically, for whoever set me in motion, because you have pushed me to this limit to which I now just want to harm you with my words. Like, that's exactly, and I'm setting out to do that. And so for me, a lot of times, like, where Devin, you sat there and you like decided, like, oh no, I'm going through your shot. Like, me, I would have been like, do I want to go in here and possibly get angrier and angrier and angrier to the point where I say something or I do something, or do I just leave now? Like, what do I do? And so I've been like always in my life struggling, like, when is the right time for you to choose to be confrontational or to be louder than I am, which I'm not. So very hard. And that, you know, there's very few times when I do it, but when I do, it's usually in a setting where, you know, you have a bunch of people together, or at least a few, and you get in this conversation. And then that's where, like, this is my spot. It's where I choose to put my ground on it, because I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to people like me, but I'm also talking to people who aren't like me. And if I have a chance, I'm going to now inform you of exactly why I don't agree with X, Y, and Z. Like, and I mean, it's come out in different ways. Like, it's just, for me, opportunity. And it never really starts, unless it's like one of these conversations, it never starts with, I'm about to educate you. It generally starts from a conversation. And that's what I love about it. It starts from a conversation. I've gone from, as a friend of mine would say, revelations, because we were in Bible study, to this is why Black Lives Matter. It never meant to get there. It was just the conversation. But it happened so gradually that no one was harmed in the conversation. No one felt attacked. It was just gradually getting there. And for me, it's always trying to figure out, like, how do you want to do this? How is it best to, you know, be confrontational? Because I have dreams of being that person who just is out there and being like, no, tear it all down. Like, being loud, being outspoken, being whatever, because it needs to happen. I just haven't figured out if I'm that person. And sometimes I'm like, I want to be, but other times I'm like, that's just not who I am. It's not who I am now. Maybe that's who I'll become. And so I'm just been looking at that a lot recently. And then the second thing that kind of came into mind when Amina was talking was that I forgot that. Anybody else take over while I bring that to mind.
Lincoln, would you like to say anything? I know.
Yeah, sure. So I know Amina was kind of talking about, like, how she didn't understand how some people would honestly vote against their interests, I think is where you were coming from. And I have felt that a lot with the white woman vote as well. Like, just being a woman, why would you vote against your interests, especially in the last presidential election? But yeah, I guess it's just I see and I connect with feeling that extra, sorry, somebody's coming home, the extra responsibility that's on you as a person of color like just being a woman, to like be that example all the time and make the right choices so that people will see you as like a reflection, as a positive reflection of your people. As an introvert, do any of you feel that like compounded to like, I don't know, maybe Ariana, maybe you could speak on that a little bit, because I'm very introverted, so it is hard for me to be like, to know when to like step up.
I say I choose my moments. And part of choosing my moments is understanding who I'm with and understanding the situation. So like if I'm in the law school and I'm with one of my friends who wouldn't speak up for themselves, then I take the opportunity, because I think in understanding like taking care of people as well as just confronting a moment, if they won't confront it, and I look at them and I can tell that they want to, but they really just can't get there, I will put myself in the uncomfortable position to do so. But if we kind of look at each other and we both know they're not worth it, this is not the time, this is not the place, then I chill. Because not every moment is your standing ground. And it's hard to take that in, because a lot of times you're like, I'm just so sick of it. Or somebody should have said something, or something needs to be done. But a lot of moments can be more damaging than helpful. And it's really just analyzing that time and saying like, you know, is it worth it? I've heard some great stories about people who were in a law school before me, and dealing with people who are starting something, and to say something to their face, but immediately walk away. And they walk out in the open, and the person followed them. So the person started the confrontation and carried it out, because they came in, they said something, and that person responded, "You're a racist." And they left. They went outside, and the person who started it followed them and was like, "No, I'm not. Take that back." And like, you know, they approached her, and she was like, "First of all, get out of my space." And I said, "You're a racist." And like, now all these other people are hearing it, but she kept her composure. And so it was like, you can choose whether or not it's the time, but, and also how you want to do it. Because that was my thing. If people got me mad enough, I say things, but see, if I said it, I meant it, and I'm not changing it. And so that's why I also choose my words very carefully, because I'm the type of person that I said it, I meant it, and I'm not changing it, I'm not apologizing. And most likely, like, if you're upset, I don't care. If you want to talk about it later, assuming I still want to deal with you, sure. But, you know, it's having that confidence. And that's the type of thing. When I speak, it's my last and final. I meant it. And I think that's why I choose my moments so carefully, because I know the impact of my words, and I've always carried that impact. It's why being so introspective and caring so much about it has taught me that not every moment is my place, because the damage of the words that you want to use or could use, you know, and yeah, some people do need to be cut down to size, but it's how you cut them down to size. It could be constructive and you could help make them a better person, or you could bring them down to a point where they're nothing and you shattered them. And you're not going to be the person to put them back together. So why'd you leave them that way?
Right.
You know? And that's why, for me, it's all about picking your moments, choosing your words wisely, and, you know, don't feel pressured. Now, I mean, I will say it's hard when someone doesn't speak up on your behalf and you're just too taken aback in a room to say anything. And so, yeah, like if you see that happening, you should probably say something. But other than that, pick your moments.
I think on the same conversation of like picking your moments, and I consider myself a bit of an introvert, and I know other people may not believe that or consider that, but on top of that, I'm not a very confrontational person, and so it's hard for me to figure out how I want the moment to be. So I know one time me and Devin, we talked about this before, like when we had the game night and some crazy stuff got said.
Oh, yeah.
And I was telling you, and I was like, probably just talk to this person individually that way, because in my mind, I'm like, is the moment necessary for me to like let this be known in public in front of everyone that this isn't okay? Or is it, you know what, let me talk to you individually so I can have this like personal one-on-one conversation with you to let you know, hey, this is an issue kind of thing. Because like I feel like if you're doing it in public, then people get into their feelings about being humiliated or being called out or being something like that. But I feel like on a more personal, especially if it's a friend, on a more personal conversation, one-on-one, this is me genuinely telling you that, this isn't acceptable, or this is not, this way of thinking can hurt other people. So like I kind of like, because I'm non-confrontational, I don't want to blow up in front of everyone, and then I feel like now I'm not only am I putting myself in an uncomfortable position, I'm also making you feel uncomfortable. But I feel like if I think we're both mature adults, then we should be able to have this conversation in a more personal, intimate setting. So I feel like you're truly learning what I'm saying instead of me thinking I'm just calling you out. Because I choose not to be confrontational, because I'm still trying to learn to handle situations in a more professional manner than how I grew up, kind of thing. So it's like, I believe that that's kind of like one of those difficult things to do, because sometimes you do need to call someone out on the spot in that situation, because it may be something completely outrageous that everyone needs to be known that this isn't okay. But like I said, in other times, it's just, how do you go about doing it, especially if it's someone that's your friend? Because honestly, I feel like there's a lot of people who are just like ignorant of some things that they say and do. And it may not be coming from a bad place, but it's just something a part of their past that they weren't aware of. It's like, oh, that's not okay. And so they just genuinely just need to be educated about it. Like I know for myself, there's some things that I may not understand, or I may say that I didn't know was offensive to someone, but they know me as a person. So it's like, if you just talk to me about it, I can go forward and like behave differently or acknowledge you in a different manner. So it's like Ariana said, it's like picking those moments and understanding what the circumstances is calling for and who you're dealing with, especially if you're someone that's an introvert. Because if you're an extrovert, you're more prone to be able to speak up then and there. But as an introvert and as someone that's not confrontational, it's really to put yourself in a position to where you feel comfortable doing it. It just really depends on how to pick the moment, like Ariana was saying.
I can understand that. I feel like if it's interesting, because I feel like that is often what happens. Like one of the biggest things is like right-wing shows, sites, whatever. They'll bring somebody on to speak, but it's a person who I feel like they're not comfortable in the setting. Maybe they're introvert or whatever, but like it's like they don't know how to confront the person at that time. And I get maybe because you're on their show and stuff like that, it's their territory. Maybe you're nervous and other things. But I do think that it is important to choose your battles wisely. Because you know me, I'll start a dump.
Yeah.
Oh.
It took him off. It took him off right before he cussed.
Yeah, he's all gone.
Oh.
Well, would anyone like to fill in until he comes back? Oh gosh.
I actually want to add to the what Calvin was saying about the friend thing, because I felt that, because confronting a stranger is actually easier than confronting someone that you consider yourself close to, for sure. I have a lot of white friends that I'm really close to that have different political views. I tried really hard not to let that affect our friendship, but it's kind of like an undercurrent of, wow, it's hard to not think, oh, this is how you feel about people like me. It's difficult. And I've been in situations where it wasn't my friend that said something, but it was one of their friends that said something inappropriate. And I just kind of looked at them like, these are the type of people you're associating with when you're not around me. Like, what's going on? And it's just, I guess you hit kind of like a freeze mode when something really triggering is said. And it's like, oh my God, like somebody really just said that. And, you know, I think that's another difficult thing to overcome is, you know, that freeze between the flight and flight thing you have going on. But yeah, it definitely resonated with the confronting friends thing. And I think the one-on-one approach is the most appropriate way, because it's like, okay, well, do I really want to lose this friend this way? And, you know, sometimes it takes that if whatever is said is bad enough. But yeah, definitely depends on the situation.
Can I jump in on the political thing? I think that was a very interesting thing, because I just remember, like, after the election, I mean, the swarm of my timeline being, you voted for him, unfriend me now. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, and it just for weeks on end. If you X, Y, and Z, unfriend me now. If you're about to like debate me on this topic, don't unfriend me now, or like actually say something so I can unfriend you. And I was just like, okay, y'all, okay. And it wasn't really until I got here. I mean, I wasn't really a part of that movement. I was just like not surprised. And I think that was the interesting thing for me is I went to bed early. It was like, it'll be what it is in the morning. Either she'll win and we'll all be decently okay, or he'll win and, well, here we go. And and I said, I won't be surprised if he does, because that's where we are. And so the interesting thing was coming up here, and I'm big on perspectives. I'm big on understanding people's perspective, and kind of why I studied philosophy, or at least part of why I studied philosophy in undergrad, is to understand the perspectives. No matter if I think the theory is trash, no matter if I think you're completely wrong, I need to understand it, because I don't like when people try to combat me and they don't understand me. And I wouldn't want to do that to someone else, because then they feel unheard, and now we're at a standstill, because it's like, well, you don't get me, I don't get you, we're not going to change views, blah, 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 it's over. And so getting up here and meeting people who I actually genuinely like care about love now, but to know like, oh, they voted for this man, and I'm like, oh, just don't see how you could do. But then, you know, I realized the same way we are, like, not everyone comes from where we come from. And in West Virginia, there's another narrative that has shaped me to, like, it has been shown to me that shapes that not everyone who voted for him hates me. They have a different survival need. And he promised something to them that they thought they would get. And that was jobs, because there's a lot of poor West Virginians. And, you know, he was very good at playing to what people wanted overall. And he did that. And so I understood. I said, you know, a lot of their vote was about a job, about providing for their family, about survival. And so that's the same survival we're looking for. But I can't be mad at them for trying to pursue their own. Because even with all of the humanity you have, to help someone else, you have to first survive. And then the next people you care about are the ones that are in your house and the ones directly around you, your friends, your family. So if you think that this will help them, most likely that's what you're doing. And then moving on to, you know, everyone else. And so that, when I began to understand that, I was like, I can't be mad, at least at most of these people, for a vote. Now, those who are like wealthy, and I can tell it's kind of like, I just want to be rich, I was like, I can still feel my way about that. But I would still rather understand everything. But I began to just try to get the different narratives, the different perspectives, because it helps. And I don't like just disliking a bunch of people, because, you know, I'd rather have a good reason because once I make up my mind, I really don't like changing it. So, you know, to understand where people come from, because that is the same understanding we're seeking. I need you to step into my story, understand where I come from and why this affects me in such a way. And if I'm not willing to do that with you, even though I am the marginalized group here, why would you do that for me? And so that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I thought you were finished. I'm sorry. No, go ahead and finish. Go ahead and finish.
That was it. I'm done.
Okay. We have about probably like 7-8 minutes before we close off. And so I would like to close off on you all briefly discussing, based off of you and your community. Let me take that back. I'm just going. What do you, based off of how you've been living right now in regards to racism, whether or not you're in a marginalized community or you're not, when it comes to the identity of this nation, what is the identity of this nation in regards to racism to you? And hey,
I can't touch that yet.
So what? Ask the question again.
So based on, okay. Go ahead.
I was going to speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a double-edged sword. Well, in terms of history and in terms of policy, it's still racist. In terms of people wanting to create change, I see a lot of people going hard to improve the system at the same time. So, both. I think it's both. I think seeing what I'm seeing now with, the indigenous women that are in office now, we might actually get some legislative action. So I have hope. I definitely have hope for its improvement, but as of right now, it's definitely still designed for one demographic, and that's wealthy white males.
Okay. Ariana?
I agree that it is largely racist. And I think that historically, I think that because the country continues to show itself in that way. And it's never enough just to speak. You have to do behind that for there to be, a tangible effect and for me to believe you. Because, that's when I say I count my words and I do them, like I make sure I'm saying what I mean. It's also because I like to keep my word. And this country, no matter what it has said, has continuously just done things to the detriment of minorities. And it is hard to ignore, one, because it's our reality. And so from years of oppression to now, well, it's gotten a little better, count the progress. And I'm like, I see progress. And I see progress that should have been happened. I've seen treaties and things signed far before any action was actually taken, far before you did anything about it. It took you years to live up to the words that were in the Constitution. And, a lot of people are like, well, the Constitution doesn't really speak to race and it's very, neutral. And I said, okay, well, either you're going to tell me the founders were racist or the document is racist. And either way, how they enforce it continues to be racist. So, ergo, we have a race problem. I do see the change. And I'm happy to see the change. I don't know. I want to be optimistic, but I realize that this system needs some help. A lot of help. And I think that's for me, like being or becoming a lawyer, shall we say. I've never been a big proponent of yay the system. It's more like the system is trash, and if I had my way, tear it down and build again, because you can't reform something that was already bad. That's band-aids on wounds. You have to transform it from the inside. You have to recreate, and that is why I'm like, we could get better, but I don't think we're gonna be like whole. Not until we realize it, take hold of it, and say we actually want to change it.
Okay. Calvin.
Yes, I once I pretty much what Amina said. That's how I felt about it. It's kind of like one of those things. Like for a while, it just seems like we were okay. Like yes, we're largely our identity is largely still where it's like there's an issue of race, like it's racism, like still prominent. And for a while, it seemed like as a country, it was like, yeah, we're gonna be okay with that. But especially given a lot of things that just happened in recent events and things of that nature, I can definitely see more people starting to like realize that that's not okay. That's not acceptable. We're not gonna allow this. Like Amanda said earlier, like now as far as like Congress and everything, we're getting more minorities in there. We're getting more diverse outlooks and opinions. And with that change, now we're actually having people in place that should be able to have policies and decisions that are diverse than what they were previously. So that does allow me to feel some kind of hope in it. But still, there's so many issues that are still unresolved that I can't say that our identity still isn't messed up as far as like when it comes to racism, because not enough people are having these conversations. Like everyone is just so strongly to their side that like if I even listen to you, then that's bad. That's not fair. I mean, that's not okay. And it's like until we get to that point where people are no longer preaching to the choir on both ends, then it's just like, how are you gonna, like Ariana said earlier, how are you gonna get those perspectives? How are you gonna know this is wrong? How are you gonna know that this isn't acceptable? So to me, it's like I'm very hopeful that progress will continue to happen, but largely I don't think we made a dent in race relations at all, like as far as how our country identifies.
Okay, all right, Devin.
I never really thought this country was great. So like, I mean, you know how
that's my fault.
You know how I felt. Like I don't like the police. I don't like school. I don't know why I went to college. No stuff, but I just the systems are broken. Like, and it's not like you can't pretend. Like it's broken. Like it's too easy to see. Like it's clearly flawed. And so, I don't know, when it comes to certain things, like how I was going to say earlier is, I think one of my biggest issues, and this is what Daddy says a lot. He says, he was trying to say that I think everybody thinks the way that I do, or that I won't listen to other sides. But it's kind of like, even for like the night that Calvin's talking about, it's more of, even if you're my friend, if I tell you something and I actually start like providing you information and you disregard the information, it's like, all right, what good would a one-on-one do? And that's how I feel like for a lot of this country, it's like, it's getting to a point, and I'm kind of happy that it's getting to this point where, especially young generations of color, and white people too, it's gotten to a point where a lot of us of the younger generation, especially who are more liberal and things like that, we're not going to have the conversations as much anymore, or we're not going to waste our energy on somebody who's dedicated to not understanding. So like, even when we had the different Hughes event at the law school, everybody's opening their hearts out and, telling things about like family members excommunicating them and, and sexual assault and things like that. And then on the other end, you just have people responding with, just people saying mean things. And, and it's like that's all you can say to, being excommunicated by your family, sexual assault, like nooses being thrown at kids and stuff like that, like people are, opening themselves up, and that's all that's being brought to the table. So now I'm with a lot of other people in the position of like, I'll waste my energy, or I'll spend my energy where it deserves to be spent. But I'm not going to waste energy on you if you're denying climate change. There's nothing to talk about. Like it's just that. Like what is there to talk about? Like what can I tell you? Like it's climate change, And I feel like that's what the country is. It's just like it's getting to a point now where regardless of whether you believe me or not, or whether you support what we're doing or not, we're going to make these changes because as history has shown, these changes benefit even you. So even in West Virginia, a lot of people, they're so pro coal, and I get it, jobs and stuff like that. But if you just went to alternative sources of energy and did other things, and you stopped destroying your environment, the little things that it doesn't seem it's not good in the short run, obviously, because every good thing in this world takes time, So, but over time, I think you'd see that you'd come out of the state of, I don't want to say depression, but they're near depression base. I would say the state of West Virginia is basically, it's near a depression because opioid crisis and all the other issues that it has to deal with on top of everything. So like, I think this country is not, it's racist. It's a racist ass country. Like, just look at what Trump's doing right now with the administration and how much support he has. And it's not like a majority of the country, but it's a large enough portion to where the Electoral College could decide, even the 3 million more people wanted something different. Hey, this is what you get. Trump's in office. So, that's how I feel about it all. It's a racist country.
Okay. Lakin.
Sure.
All right, we're throwing it to you.
Okay. So, I guess I've noticed two sides of this, two groups, and the side that I like to identify with is like a more reasonable and becoming more progressive side, but also having come from a predominantly white community, I see people that I think are regressing and just becoming more solidified in those like racist opinions and racist acts. So I'm not sure. I guess I'm torn because I see people progressing on this side, but then I see the opposite. So I just think that there's a really strong divide right now when it comes to that. And I want to focus on the positive, but the negative is there and needs attention too. So I'm not sure how you'd classify it if it's 50-50 to me.
Okay. So, ladies and gents, I want to thank you all for participating in the conversation. We went over an hour, but that's all good. It was good. And everyone else, please come back to us. We will be doing this either weekly or bi-weekly, but you will see us every 2 weeks, and I will see everybody later. Bye-bye. Y'all say bye to everybody.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.